Hi CC tutors, this is Cycle 1, Week 2 Art, and today in Community you're going to be going over mirror images with your students, and you're going to be talking about symmetry with them. We're going to start with a review of last week, which was oils, and then jump into what are mirror images in art, and then from there you have a few matchups, some famous artwork that use mirror imagery in them, and then we're going to be finishing with some fun activities that mostly have to do with leaves, and that works nicely for this time of year because leaves are starting to change here and fall from trees, so it just has a nice connectivity to it that I think kids will be noticing that outside as well. So the first thing I would have you do though is locate in your 3-ring binder the script for week 2, and this, it should say week 2 mirror images up at the top. You can follow along if you want, but it's going to be a lot like last week. It's bullet pointed. It has a few questions to just kind of probe your kids' mind and generate some conversation. It has a definition, some snapshots of our famous artwork that we're going to look at, and then a step-by-step tutorial for the activities we're going to be doing. So one thing you might think to do at the beginning is review oils. Just ask your students, did you notice any examples of oils out and around you this week? Did you notice it in art or in a picture book, in nature? See what they say. You don't have to spend too much time on that question, but it's just good to have that refresher up front. So start maybe with that, and then from there you can ask your kids, do you know what a mirror image is? And you can use a mirror as a good example. I don't have mirrors in your bins, but you can ask, like, you guys have all seen your reflection in a mirror, right? So you're seeing yourself, but it's like a flipped image of yourself. So sometimes like a right hand is going to look like a left hand and vice versa. That's what mirror imagery is, and artists, they would use that to often create like a sense of balance and unity and harmony in their artwork, and so we're going to get to see that when we go to our famous artworks, but just start having that conversation with them. There is a definition right in your script. If you just want to read from that, that's okay too. So then moving on into the famous artwork, I'm just going to hold these up like I did last week, give you the artist's name, the work of art's name, and if you want to expound on that in class, in community, you can. There's a little info maybe for each painting, but you don't have to go super in depth. It's just to familiarize your students with examples of this, how artists have used it in their work. So the first one that you're going to see in your 3-ring binder is by Caravaggio. It is called Narcissus. So this is his interpretation, his painting of the Greek myth of Narcissus. He is leaning over, looking at his own reflection in a pool of water. And it might be helpful to do this for your students so that when you do that, you can see this really nice midline where now we have him over here and here's his reflection, and it looks so very similar. You can ask your students, have you ever seen your own reflection in a body of water? How does it look the same? How does it look different? Because it does distort it a little bit. It's not as crisp and clear, but I think this is a nice example of that in artwork. And if you have older students, maybe because this ties in great with studying ancient history, ask if any of your students are familiar with the Greek myth of Narcissus. If they are, that's something they could share. Or you could mention that there's even a flower named after this character, and it is the daffodil, but its scientific name would be Narcissus. So that's our first painting. The next one is going to be a portion of a much larger artwork called the Ghent Altarpiece by Jan van Eyck. And this is so great, like you could just fold it over almost, and you would be able to see right where that midline is. Van Eyck did a really nice job of creating balance by this grouping of people over here, how it matches like the weight of this group of people over here. Same with our angels right here, and more people over here. This is technically called the Adoration of the Holy Lamb, but it's part of a much larger work. It's a polytype, so there's lots of different panels, but the whole work of art, if you want to look it up on your own, is a great mirror image with a lot of biblical themes there. So that is the Ghent Altarpiece. And then lastly, we have a work of art by Norman Rockwell called Lift Up Thine Eyes. and he painted this of a cathedral in New York City, St. Thomas Cathedral. And yeah, you could fold it. Again, almost. This architecture perfectly mirrors the architecture over there down to the statues and everything. Even the people walking on the street, you have them mostly going in this direction on that side, but over here, they're reflecting that, coming in that direction. If you want to go a little deeper, you can, with some cultural undertones here. This was painted some time ago, but maybe ask, why is the parish telling the city walkers to lift up thine eyes? They do look distracted, don't they? So what message here is being sent? And if it were a modern day painting, how would it be similar or different? Immediately comes to mind that maybe people would be looking down at their phones distracted. But you can ask your class these questions if you want. You don't have to. Just some stuff to think about. So I have one more optional thing though that you can do with your class if you'd like. For younger classes, you'll find this in your bag or in your bin. It's called Mirror Mirror. It's reverse rhymes. So this author did a really neat job. Oh, it's like a mirror image. I had it upside down. So this author did a really good job of writing poetry though that perfectly mirrors itself. So I did flag a page that would be easy to do in class because it's not very long, and I think it's easier than maybe some of the other ones in there for kids to digest. But as you can see, the first word, someday, on this side is going to be the last word, someday, over here on that side. So you could read through this if you want, and it is fascinating because it paints a totally different story when you flip it like that, but the words really do reflect each other. This is for younger classes, and then also for older classes, this one is called Echo Echo, and that follows more Greek mythology, these myths. I also flagged one that's not too long, probably could feel maybe even a bit more appropriate than some of the other ones that are in this book. So this is King Midas and his daughter, even right here. This is a great mirror image, the two sides of her. You could read through this. It's optional. It's just nice to be able to tie in literature to art sometimes, but you'll find that in your bins. So then from there, we're going to talk about the activities that you get to do with your class this week. Younger classes are actually going to be doing something different than older classes up front, but then I provided the materials for a secondary activity, time permitting. It's just fine if you don't get to it, but if you do have that extra time and they want to do a little more with mirror images, you will have everything at hand. So I'm going to start with the younger class first. You're going to get some fresh leaves the morning of community, so they're not all crunchy and crinkled up. But this is just one from my yard, and you can see, if I fold it, it lays almost perfectly on top of the other side. It's a mirror image, and that's really cool. God did that. He put mirror images all around us, and it's nice to be able to tie that back in for kiddos. But you'll get leaves, and then you can talk about bilateral symmetry if you want. Everything's in your script. You can talk about how the veins mirror each other. Go as deep or as surface level as you want. But the activity they'll be doing, you want to use a disposable tablecloth because they're going to be working with tempera or acrylic paint. Each kid is going to get one of these. It is just a blank template, but you're going to help them fold it where the midline would be so that it does lay on half of itself, over itself, just like we practiced over here. And they're going to be painting on one side, so you have to make sure they know that, because otherwise I think it might be tempting to put paint on both sides, but they'll have it right in front of them laying down, and they're only going to apply it on one side. I did practice this with my 4-year-old ahead of time, and I learned that drizzling paint on top gets really gloppy and messy, so I would recommend using the throwaway paper plates and paint brushes with just some dabs of paint on the paper plate, and that way, as long as they put enough on here, it'll still transfer really nicely, but it won't be as gloppy. But you're going to do that, have them put paint on one side, you'll have all of that in your bin. And then there's also glitter. I know sometimes glitter makes people anxious. It can get really messy. You don't have to use it. If you choose to, it'll just jazz it up a little bit more. We did this. This is how ours turned out. And you can see how the colors are a mirror image on both sides, but the glitter got maybe a little much, so just a pinch is enough. When you're done letting them paint, you're going to want to transfer all these wet leaves to another disposable tablecloth on the floor. And I have that in your Ziploc bags so that they can dry. I grabbed this too. Maybe I'll bring these in. Just another example of mirror images in nature. These are like the little maple tree seeds that perfectly reflect one another. But you can just ask kids too, like, where else do you see it? And some ideas are like butterflies or a rainbow or a snowflake. So that's the first activity for younger kiddos. And for older students, you're going to find everything you need for this in your Ziploc bags and in your bins. It's just a piece of white cardstock. There's all different colors of this half sheet, and you're going to also have fresh leaves. Each student will get one, and they're going to lay it on top of the colored side. So this won't be glued down yet. And then you're going to have them just trace around the leaf, just like that. And when they're done, they're going to cut this out and try to like not let them cut into the negative space, because otherwise this won't look as neat when it's done. But after they've cut that out, you just flip it over here. Then you start gluing stuff down. You'll be gluing down the colored half. You'll be gluing this down. Give them some markers that they can use in order to add some additional designs if they want. Make it their own. Have fun with it. So that'll all be in your bin. There's also, I should mention, in your script, there's a QR code for these activities. Look for that. And if you want to watch it ahead of time, it might just give you even more kind of confidence in what you're doing. But you can scan that and watch it ahead of time. And then the last activity, which you'll have in your bin in case there's time, both younger and older classes would be able to do this. I want to warn you ahead of time, it is a little messy, has beautiful outcome, but I want everybody to manage their expectations because chalk pastels are a bit messy, and that's what you'd be using for it. So everybody would have black cardstock. You're going to get a couple boxes of chalk pastels, and then these cutouts. And you would just hand these out to the kids, 2 per student, and use painter's tape or masking tape because it's a little more forgiving than Scotch tape. When you put these leaves down on the black paper, Scotch tape might actually rip some of that black off. They would use the chalk pastels to do a thick outline around the template. So if I were putting this one back on here, it would just be choosing colors in whatever order they want around the edges of it. Once they have their whole outline in place, make sure it's nice and thick. They can use a cotton swab or their own finger to make outward brush strokes, just like this. And it does get messy. There's a lot of dust that comes from this. So I recommend keeping a trash bin close to your table, and that way you can kind of tap it right in there, either in progress or at the end. Don't take the leaves off until they've done all of the outward blending, and try to encourage them not to go side to side with their blending. It just doesn't work as well. Then very carefully you'll remove the templates, and if you want, you can even use a cotton swab to kind of touch up the spots that have the excess on them. I didn't do that, but you can. So leaves are mirror images, and it works really well for what we're studying in art this week. You'll find everything for these activities in your bin, but if you are unsure about something, don't hesitate to reach out to me, and I can help explain that. And yeah, that's it. I hope you guys have fun creating in class this week.